In a dusty corner of West Africa, something extraordinary is unfolding. Just 3 years ago, Burkina Faso was a forgotten name. In the headlines, a landlocked nation buried under foreign debt, dependent on food aid, and left out of global conversations. But today, under the bold and unapologetic leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, this small country is rewriting its destiny. This isn't another political speech. It's not a campaign promise. It's 25 concrete projects built, launched, and funded, reshaping the very foundations of Burkina Faso. From gold refineries to electric vehicles, from free university education to hospitals deep in rural villages, this land of the upright people is rising with its sleeves rolled up and its head held high. And here's the truth that no mainstream Africa news channel will tell you. One of these projects alone generated over $36 billion in 2023. That's not foreign aid. That's not borrowed. That's earned. So we ask you, what does real independence look like? Is it in parliaments or is it in wheat fields, clean drinking water, and children learning in classrooms built by their own fathers? If you've ever doubted that a nation could rise from the margins without asking permission from global powers, Burkina Faso is the answer, staring the world in the face. Please like this video, share it with someone who still believes Africa can't build on its own, and subscribe if you believe the truth is more important than the headlines. Let us take you through the 25 most revolutionary projects reshaping this nation and maybe, just maybe, the future of the continent. The story of Burkina Faso's transformation doesn't begin with fanfare. It begins on the runway of a small airport. In October 2024, after months of silence, the national airline Air Burkina roared back to life. The first flight, a humble yet symbolic route, Ouagadougou to Dakar via Bamako. But what made headlines wasn't the destination, it was the aircraft. A brand new Embraer 190 purchased with strategic support from China, valued at over $109 million. With just 6 business class seats and 92 in economy, it wasn't about luxury, it was about efficiency and regional unity. President Ibrahim Traoré made it clear Burkina Faso would no longer be landlocked in spirit. From Accra to Abidjan, the nation is now reconnecting with West Africa on its own terms. But while Air Burkina took to the skies, another revolution was breaking ground right in the soil. Not far from Bobo Dioulasso, an ultra-modern cashew processing plant opened its doors. More than a factory, it was a symbol of something deeper: economic emancipation. Designed to process local harvests into high-value exports, the facility is expected to create over 20,000 jobs, some say even 50,000. No more raw exports. No more giving away the treasure and buying back the crumbs. Burkina Faso is keeping the value home. And it didn't stop with cashews. A community-funded tomato factory also in Bobo Dioulasso became the nation's first of its kind. The financing came not from international loans, but from ordinary citizens and diaspora investors, turning every bottle of tomato paste into a symbol of unity. The factory can process 100 tons of tomatoes per day, bringing relief to farmers plagued by spoilage and market instability. In the next 5 years alone, it's projected to earn over $13 million in revenue while creating thousands of direct and indirect jobs. What does this mean in real terms? It means fewer children missing meals. It means more mothers employed. It means farmers, for the first time in decades, can plant with confidence. But food security wasn't the only target. Traoré understood that sovereignty begins with financial access. So in October 2024, after a vision stalled for over 30 years, Burkina Faso officially launched its postal bank, a state-owned institution with a $25 million capital injection dedicated to serving the underserved. From rural villagers to small entrepreneurs, this bank was built to close the gap. With services ranging from microloans to savings accounts, it's now reaching those who were long ignored by traditional banks, women, youth, and farmers. And while the world's financial giants watch from afar, a silent wave of financial empowerment is growing inside one of Africa's most resilient nations. Meanwhile, a less glamorous but deeply symbolic initiative unfolded: cotton transformation. Burkina Faso is the #1 cotton producer in Africa, yet for decades it had to import police and military uniforms, a painful reminder of dependency. Under Traoré's leadership, that changed. A new national facility now produces all police and army uniforms locally using Burkinabe cotton. Even more boldly, the country's judges have ditched their colonial-era European wigs. Instead, they now wear traditional African robes, a cultural renaissance in black and gold. In 2023, Traore made it official: all school uniforms must now be made with Faso Danfani, the indigenous woven fabric that tells a story in every stitch. Importing secondhand clothes banned. This isn't just fabric. Traore told a cheering crowd, "It's our identity." These early projects, planes, factories, banks, textiles, are more than infrastructure. They are the rebuilding of dignity, the return of pride, and the rise of a nation that was never poor, only silenced. And this is just the beginning. There comes a point in every nation's journey when it must choose to bow or to build. For Burkina Faso, that moment came in late 2024 with gold. For years, foreign companies, particularly from Canada and France, extracted billions of dollars in raw gold from Burkina Faso's soil, while local communities remained in poverty. But on August 2024, President Ibrahim Traoré stunned the world. He nationalized the country's largest gold mines, Bongo and Vagnon, and inaugurated Burkina Faso's first-ever gold refinery. A nation that once exported its treasure in raw form was now refining it at home, keeping value jobs and sovereignty inside its borders. The new refinery, built in partnership with Marina Gold, has a capacity of 150 tons annually. It created over 5,000 jobs directly and indirectly. This act was more than economic. It was psychological. It said to every citizen, "We will no longer be the laborers of others' wealth." The West took notice. Major media outlets called it radical, populist, even dangerous. But on the streets of Ouagadougou, vendors danced. Goldsmiths wept. Children waved flags. Then came something even bolder. In July 2023, in a quiet room in Moscow, Traoré sat face-to-face with President Vladimir Putin. There, he signed a deal that shocked Washington and Brussels: a $4 billion nuclear energy partnership with Rosatom. For the first time in history, a West African nation without a coastline, routinely dismissed as powerless, was planning to generate clean, domestic, industrial-scale energy. The nuclear plant, set to be operational by 2030, is expected to power not just Burkina Faso, but export electricity to neighboring states like Ghana, Togo, and Mali. This was no longer about survival, it was about leadership. American analysts expressed concern. European diplomats whispered escalation. But for Burkinabe youth studying electrical engineering, this was a revolution of purpose. One student posted online, "They told us to flee our country. Now I want to stay and build it." But perhaps the most seismic shock came not from a mine or a reactor, but a treaty. In late 2023, President Traoré, alongside leaders from Mali and Niger, signed the Alliance of Sahel States (AES). It was not just a defense pact, it was a confederation, a political, military, and economic alliance declaring complete break from the ECOWAS bloc. No longer would these countries be subjected to economic sanctions, coup condemnations, and top-down democracy lessons from the West. The AES began drafting plans for a common currency, a joint stabilization fund, and a regional central bank. Burkina Faso even issued a new biometric passport without the ECOWAS logo. Symbolic, yes, but deeply powerful. Western media framed it as regional instability, but across Africa, the reaction was electric. In Kenya, students painted murals of Traoré next to Thomas Sankara. In Nigeria, protesters wore Faso Danfani during marches. In the U.S., African diaspora groups hosted forums titled "Is Burkina Faso Showing Us the Blueprint?" Back home, reactions weren't just emotional, they were physical. Burkinabe citizens began organizing to buy shares in local factories. Former migrants returned from Europe to open agribusiness startups. Even school children learned to sing the AES anthem in class. At the same time, France pulled out the last of its troops. The French military base was closed. Traoré had already shut down Radio France Internationale and expelled Western press missions that he claimed were spreading colonial narratives. The world took a deep breath. Was this the beginning of a new Cold War in Africa? Was this just posturing or the realignment of a continent long pushed to the margins? Whatever the answer, one thing was clear: Burkina Faso had crossed a threshold. There was no turning back. And in the words of President Traoré himself, "We are not against anyone, but we will never again be beneath anyone." Political declarations make headlines, but real leadership changes lives on the ground. Under President Ibrahim Traoré, the transformation of Burkina Faso hasn't just been about gold or geopolitics, it has been deeply human. And nowhere is that clearer than in the villages, schools, and hospitals across this resilient land. In the western city of Bobo Dioulasso, a brand new geriatric hospital opened its doors in 2025, the first of its kind in the region. Built with $11 million in government funding, the hospital now offers free annual checkups and subsidized medications to over 95,000 retired civil servants, widows, and elders. For many, this wasn't just healthcare, it was dignity restored. "I buried my husband 5 years ago," one widow said. "I thought I was forgotten, but now they know my name at the clinic." In the north, where roads were once impassable and schools abandoned due to conflict, things are changing too. 250 previously closed schools have been reopened. New ones are rising: 44 modern high schools, 39 lecture halls, and 10 technical institutes built with solar panels, vocational labs, and community ownership. In 2024, Traoré launched a bold reform-free education from primary school through university. No tuition, no hidden fees, just learning accessible to all. One teacher in the Sahel region wrote in chalk across his blackboard, "This classroom is the new battlefield and education is our weapon." But education alone wasn't enough. Housing had become a crisis. Displacement due to violence and poverty had left thousands without shelter. In response, the government began building 1,000 social housing units across regions like the Nord Centre Nord Plateau Central and Hautes-Bassin. Each unit wasn't just a structure, it was a new start for families who had spent years in limbo. Accompanying the housing initiative was a massive road infrastructure project, the largest in the nation's history. After 62 years of independence, Burkina Faso had less than 4,000 kilometers of paved roads. Traoré's administration set an ambitious goal: 50,000 kilometers of new roads by 2029. But here's the twist: no foreign contractors, no international tenders. Instead, the state purchased 900 heavy-duty machines and hired local engineers and unemployed youth, training them to build their own country. A former street vendor in Ouahigouya now operates a bulldozer. He says, "I used to sell oranges by the roadside. Now I'm building that road." These civil programs have done more than create jobs, they've rebuilt trust between the people and their government. And this is no small feat in a region where political instability has plagued nearly every generation. Culturally, a quiet revolution is taking place too. In 2023, Traoré ordered that school uniforms be made from Faso Danfani, the indigenous hand-woven fabric supporting local artisans and celebrating national identity. Courts replaced colonial British-style wigs with African attire. Even Burkina Faso's diplomats began wearing traditional dress at summits. For a nation long told that modernity meant mimicry, this was liberation. And in the capital, where urban congestion and pollution had become unbearable, a new innovation emerged: Litao, the first 100% Burkinabe-made electric car. Designed by local engineers, it offers 330 kilometers of range and recharges in just 30 minutes. Powered by solar stations, it's more than a vehicle, it's a message: we can invent, we can lead. This people-first approach has reshaped the political landscape. Surveys conducted in mid-2025 show that President Traoré holds approval ratings above 80%, even in regions historically skeptical of military rule. And yet not everyone is celebrating. Opposition parties, long entrenched in systems designed for electoral cycles, struggle to redefine their relevance. Foreign-backed NGOs warn of authoritarianism and lack of political plurality. But inside the country, many citizens say this moment is not about ideology, it's about results. A farmer in Kaya put it plainly: "I don't care if he wears a uniform or a tie. My kids are in school. My fields are full. That's what matters." Burkina Faso may not yet be a utopia. Challenges remain: security threats, inflation, and the ever-present risk of international backlash. But the foundations of something new have been laid. And this time they were laid by the people themselves. While most Americans may not be able to locate Burkina Faso on a map, Washington's foreign policy circles are watching it very closely. The shift is impossible to ignore. Here is a country once fully aligned with France, dependent on US aid and marginal in global trade, now cutting military ties with the West, refining its own gold-building electric vehicles, and even pursuing nuclear energy with Russia. It's no longer a recipient of charity, it's a driver of regional ambition. For U.S. officials, the question isn't whether Burkina Faso is rising, it's who's helping it rise. The most immediate concern stems from Traore's growing alignment with Russia and his public defiance of Western institutions. American analysts have noted with alarm the Rosatom nuclear deal, the reopening of the Russian embassy, and the visible presence of Russian security consultants in Ouagadougou. But this isn't just about geopolitics, it's about narrative control. Burkina Faso under Traoré has expelled French military forces, shut down international broadcasters accused of spreading colonial propaganda, and openly questioned the legitimacy of Western-led financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank. In response, Western media often paints a familiar picture: authoritarian populist, anti-democratic military ruler, a new puppet in the global East-West rivalry. But within African-American intellectual circles and diaspora communities, another narrative is emerging. From Howard University to Harvard's African Studies Department, students are writing theses on Traoré's political strategy. Think tanks in New York and London are hosting panels with titles like Beyond Aid: The Case for African Sovereignty in a Post-Colonial World. Online African-American influencers and Pan-African YouTube channels are amplifying Burkina Faso's model as a symbol of Afrocentric self-determination. Some even compare Traoré to Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's iconic revolutionary who challenged both Western capitalism and African authoritarianism in the 1980s. Meanwhile, in Washington, a quieter concern looms. What if this model spreads? Burkina Faso's actions are emboldening other nations, Mali, Niger, and even Ghana, where talk of revisiting mining contracts and rejecting IMF terms has already begun. This could mean the unraveling of decades of carefully maintained influence in West Africa. The State Department has issued cautious statements, urging respect for democratic timelines and restoration of constitutional order. But even within the U.S., there's division. Some former diplomats argue privately, we lost trust because we treated African sovereignty as a threat instead of a partner. Others in Congress are pushing for a reassessment of military aid and sanctions mechanisms, especially if Burkina Faso continues to push further from traditional Western spheres of influence. Ironically, the U.S. public, especially older Americans who remember the Cold War, may recognize echoes of past interventions. From Iran in 1953 to Chile in 1973, whenever a developing country tried to assert its economic independence, the result was often destabilization. But there's a growing awareness that today's Africa is different. It's not asking for permission. It's asking to be left alone to build. This shift challenges not only U.S. foreign policy, but also the very definition of democracy, development, and partnership. What do Americans believe true progress looks like for Africa? Is it elections every 4 years, or food, healthcare, and schools built by the people themselves? One retired U.S. Army colonel wrote in Foreign Policy Weekly, if Traoré survives and succeeds, he won't just change Burkina Faso. He'll change how the entire world engages with post-colonial states. And maybe that's why the silence is louder than sanctions. Because deep down, even the most seasoned policymakers understand Burkina Faso is not just resisting, it's redefining. History does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers through the hum of a factory floor, the turning of a tractor in a village, the ink on a schoolchild's notebook. What we are witnessing in Burkina Faso is not a flash in the pan. It's a foundational shift, a slow, steady awakening of a people who have decided to stop waiting for permission and start building with their own hands. But as always, such awakenings do not go unchallenged. There are whispers of destabilization. There are warnings from foreign banks. There are threats of sanctions. And yet the Burkinabe people continue to pave roads, grow their own food, refine their own gold, and educate their youth, all without needing approval from Washington, Brussels, or Paris. It's a dangerous thing when a poor nation stops begging and starts dreaming. The question we must ask now is not, can they sustain it, but will the world allow them to? Because if the past is any guide, powerful interests don't easily surrender control, and history shows that when Africa rises on its own terms, it becomes a threat not to global security, but to the global hierarchy. That's why this moment matters, not just for Africa, but for all of us watching. In the United States, many of us grew up with a certain narrative of what development should look like in Africa: foreign aid, peacekeeping troops, elections run by outside observers. But what if that model was wrong all along? What if real progress looks like Burkina Faso, messy, indigenous, and unapologetically independent? What if instead of asking African nations to copy our systems, we simply listen to what they're building? And so we ask you, do you believe Ibrahim Traoré's approach rooted in dignity, production, and sovereignty is a vision worth protecting? Can a country like Burkina Faso truly survive the weight of its own freedom, or will the pressures from outside be too strong? And perhaps most importantly, if this works, what does it mean for the rest of Africa and for how the West must rethink its role? This is not just a story of a small African nation. This is the beginning of a new chapter in global history, one where pride replaces pity, where self-reliance replaces dependency. If you've made it this far, you're already among the few who see what others are still ignoring. Please share this video if you believe in the power of nations to write their own future. Subscribe if you believe that the truth is more important than the headlines. And in the comments below, tell us which of the 25 projects inspires you the most and why. Because if no one tells this story, it might never be told. Thank you for watching. And as always, stay informed, stay inspired, stay free.